So over here is the dead pile of wood that I took off, and right here in front of me is the wood that I've removed that was damaged and diseased. Not very much wood. I can tell from experience that I have probably about 3 or 4 cuts left on the tree, so I can move on to the next step. But let me just say from experience that we have a tendency to overdo it. It's better to take less and take longer time on your tree than to hurry up, because you can actually set that tree back by taking too much vegetation in 1 year. You can actually set it back 3 or 4 years. So we've eliminated the competition by opening up the southern exposure for the tree, cutting down any trees that are in the way. And then we've removed all the dead wood, because that's how disease can get into the tree really easily. Then we removed the damaged and diseased wood. But if you still have wood that you can prune in that 25% for the year, you can take a couple of cuts. Remember the principle. A few big cuts is better than a lot of little cuts. I'd rather make 3 cuts of larger branches rather than picking 40 little shoots here and there to snip off, because that sends messages to the root system to grow more vegetation. The first one is any shoots or branches that come back in toward the center of the tree. In other words, they grow back in toward the trunk. Ultimately, what you want is your tree to be opened up in the center, so that you're getting sunlight from the outside and you're also getting it from the inside. Think of an hourglass shape, if you will. And any of those branches that are growing back into the center eliminate sunlight from being able to go through. And so we want to get rid of those potentially. Any branch that is growing parallel to another branch within a foot can be eliminated. Redundancy on an apple tree is not a good thing, because they're in competition for sunlight. A lot of times you'll have one branch stacked right on top of another branch. There's airspace between them, but not very much. So you want to eliminate one of those branches so there's not as much competition. Another type of cut that you can make is on vertical shoots. These are usually water sprouts, fast-growing vegetation, which usually doesn't produce very much fruit. I will say on wild crabapple trees, there is an exception here. I've noticed a lot of apples being born on vertical shoots. But on regular apple trees, those vertical shoots tend not to bear very much, and they also tend to be weaker in nature, and they can snap in the wind. So we can take out a vertical shoot perhaps. And of course, if there's anything that's blocking the southern exposure from the apple tree itself, we want to open that southern exposure up so the sunlight can get in. Remember, sunlight is important, but so is the air circulation that takes place. That's one of the reasons why we prune, so that there's good air circulation. In northwestern Pennsylvania, where I live, we have high humidity. That means that we're prone to having more diseases because we get a lot of rain and it stays damp, and that's what bacteria and viruses and fungi like to grow in, those wet kind of conditions. Of course, I can't do all of those things this year. I don't have enough cuts left. I only have probably 3 cuts. And so I'm looking for, if possible, any shoots or branches that actually embodied 2 or even 3 of those bad type of branches that I just described. So if I can kill a couple of birds with one stone, I'm going to do that. So let's take a look at the tree and see if we can make some educated guesses here. All right, so this is south that I'm looking at right now. That's fairly open and looks pretty good. A little too thick in there. This is about the center of the tree, and it's quite thick in the center. If we come around over here, you notice these 2 towers. They're vertical shoots. Ideally, I'd like to eliminate one of those at least, or at least the top of it, but this year it's probably not going to happen. This vertical shoot right here is not very big, but it's almost completely useless. You can't see it because it goes all the way up above most of the canopy, but it's mostly just vegetative growth. This is the center of the tree, almost looking directly up from the trunk. And notice this branch right here in the center. It's actually growing right into the center of the tree. That one is definitely going to go because it's also blocking sun from entering from the south. I'll also consider pruning branches that are not between that ideal 30 and 60 degree angle that I talked about in the introductory of this apple pruning tutorial. And so on these older trees, I don't worry about it near as much as I would on a tree that I'm either starting from scratch, and I want to make sure that it forms really good, strong branches. So now you've learned the basics of pruning. Of course, there's more complex things that you can learn, but those are the basics to make sure that you can prune your tree to ensure that you produce as much fruit as possible for the fall for your deer herd. Now all there is left to do is to stand back and watch and observe over time which apple trees on your property do deer favor, and those you want to target perhaps as some of your primary hunting stand locations, because there's hardly anything as powerful as an apple in the fall for the white-tailed deer. Until next time, I'm Darryl Meyer with Seeds to Dreams Deer, and I hope that you find more than you think you're hunting for.